You think you've heard every cheating story out there, secret texts, hidden affairs, the classic working late excuse. But this is something else. Imagine a 64-year-old woman, a grandmother, someone you'd never suspect, living a double life so shocking. Even her family didn't see it coming. Her name was Linda. From the outside, she was the picture of stability, married for 38 years, a pillar of her small-town community, the kind of woman who baked pies for church fundraisers. But behind closed doors, she was leading a second life that would unravel in the most explosive way possible. It started with a single Facebook message. Linda had never been tech-savvy, but when her old high school sweetheart, Mark, sent her a friend request, curiosity got the best of her. One harmless, "Hey, how have you been?" turned into late-night chats, then secret meetups, then something far darker. What began as innocent nostalgia spiraled into a full-blown affair. Hotel rooms, lies stacked on lies, even a secret bank account. But here's the twist. Mark wasn't just some lonely ex. He had a plan. And by the time Linda realized what was really happening, it was too late. This isn't just a story about infidelity. It's about deception, manipulation, and how the past can come back to destroy you. Because Linda wasn't the only one keeping secrets. Let's rewind. Linda's husband, Richard, was a retired mechanic, quiet, dependable, the kind of man who fixed things instead of talking about them. Their marriage wasn't perfect, but after 4 decades, they'd settled into a comfortable rhythm. Or so he thought. Then, Linda started acting different. Suddenly, she cared about her appearance, new clothes, hair dye, even perfume. She'd disappear for errands that took hours. When Richard asked, she'd laugh it off. Just keeping busy. But the truth? She was driving 2 towns over to meet Mark in cheap motels, rewriting the ending of a teenage romance that never was. The affair was reckless. She used her granddaughter's birthday as an alibi. She lied to her daughter about doctor's appointments. She even snuck Mark into her house when Richard was out fishing. But the most shocking part? Mark wasn't in love. He wasn't even interested. Because while Linda thought this was a passionate second chance, Mark was playing a long game. He'd spent years in and out of prison, and he saw Linda as one thing, an easy target. The money started disappearing first. Small amounts, $200 here, $500 there, from the joint account she shared with Richard. House repairs, she'd say. Gifts for the grandkids. Then, one day, $10,000 vanished. That's when Richard started digging. What he found would break him. Bank statements, emails, a second phone hidden in her knitting basket. And the final blow, a life insurance policy Linda had taken out on him, just weeks after reconnecting with Mark. This wasn't an affair. It was a setup. And the most terrifying question of all, was Linda in on it? Or was she being played too? Richard's hands shook as he flipped through the papers scattered across the kitchen table. Each receipt, each withdrawal, each suspicious transaction was like a punch to the gut. But the life insurance policy? That wasn't just betrayal, it was a threat. He'd always trusted Linda. Never checked her phone, never questioned her spending. Now he wished he had. Because the woman he'd shared a bed with for 38 years wasn't just cheating. She might have been planning his death. Richard didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, he did something smarter. He followed her. The next time Linda said she was going to visit her sister, Richard tailed her in his old pickup, heart pounding. She didn't drive toward her sister's house. She took the back roads, the kind you only use when you don't want to be seen. 30 minutes later, she pulled into the parking lot of a rundown motel, the kind with flickering neon signs and rooms that still reeked of cigarette smoke from the 90s. And there he was, Mark. Richard recognized him instantly from Linda's old yearbooks. But the man standing in that parking lot wasn't the clean-cut football player from her photos. This Mark had hollow cheeks, tattoos creeping up his neck, and the cold, calculating look of someone who'd spent too much time in prison. Linda rushed into his arms like a lovesick teenager. Richard almost vomited. He wanted to storm in, to scream, to drag her out by her hair. But something stopped him. The way Mark was watching her, like a predator sizing up prey. This wasn't love. It was a con. Richard drove home in silence, his mind racing. He needed proof. Not just of the affair, but of whatever game Mark was playing. So he did the one thing he'd never imagined doing. He hired a private investigator. 2 days later, the truth came crashing down. Mark had a record, fraud, embezzlement, even suspicion of arson. His last girlfriend had accused him of draining her savings before disappearing. And now, He'd been seen driving a brand new truck, one paid for with withdrawals from Linda's account. But the real horror came when the investigator dug deeper into the life insurance policy. It wasn't just Richard's name on it. Linda had taken one out on herself, too. And the beneficiary? Mark. Suddenly, the pieces fit together in the worst possible way. This wasn't just about money. It was about all the money. The house. The retirement funds. Everything. Richard's blood ran cold. Because if Linda was in on it, she'd signed her own death warrant. And if she wasn't, she had no idea what Mark was really capable of. Richard sat in his truck outside the PI's office, gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. The investigator's words kept replaying in his head. This guy's dangerous. If your wife's involved, she's in way over her head. And if she's not, he didn't need to finish the sentence. Richard knew what happened to people who got in Mark's way. That night, he waited until Linda was asleep, then quietly pulled her phone from her purse. His stomach churned as he scrolled through her messages, flirty texts, secret plans, even a photo of Mark shirtless on a motel bed. But then he saw it. A message from 3 days ago. Mark, we need to move faster. The policy takes 60 days to activate. After that, it's just a matter of making it look real. Linda, I'm trying. He's getting suspicious. Mark, then stop giving him reasons to be. Or do I need to handle this myself? Richard's blood turned to ice. Handle it himself. He didn't need a translator to know what that meant. For the first time in his life, Richard was afraid of his own wife. Was she really capable of this? Had 38 years of marriage meant nothing? Or was she just another pawn in Mark's game, too blinded by love to see the trap? He had to know. The next morning, Richard played the part of the oblivious husband, pouring coffee, asking about her day, even kissing her cheek like nothing was wrong. But when Linda left for another errand, he didn't follow her. Instead, he went to the one person who might still get through to her, their daughter, Emily. Emily was a no-nonsense divorce attorney. She'd seen every dirty trick in the book, hidden assets, fake debts, even staged accidents for insurance payouts. When Richard showed her the evidence, her face went pale. Dad, this isn't just cheating. This is premeditated. She pulled up Mark's record on her laptop, and the screen filled with charges, fraud, forgery, even an old assault case that had been pled down. But the most damning detail? Every single one of his exes had wound up broke. One had her house mysteriously burned down. Another fell down the stairs right after changing her will. Emily's voice was steady, but her hands shook. Mom's either in on this, or she's next. Either way, we need to get her out. Now. But Linda wasn't answering her phone, and Mark's truck was parked outside their house. Richard and Emily pulled into the driveway, just as Mark's truck screeched away, kicking up gravel. The front door was slightly open, something Linda never allowed. Inside, the house was too quiet. No humming from the kitchen, no TV murmuring in the den. Just the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway, counting the seconds like a bomb about to blow. Then they heard it. A muffled sob from the bedroom. Linda sat on the edge of the bed. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks, clutching a crumpled piece of paper. When she saw them, her face twisted into something between guilt and terror. You know, she whispered. Richard threw the printed bank statements onto the bed. We know everything. What happened next was like watching a dam break. Linda collapsed into hysterics, gasping out a confession between ragged breaths. Yes, she'd reconnected with Mark. Yes, she'd been stealing money. But the life insurance policies? The threats? I didn't, he made me. Emily cut in coldly. Did he hold a gun to your head when you took out a policy on Dad? Linda's hands flew to her mouth. No, it was just, he said it was for us, for our future. Then he started saying if I backed out now. She didn't finish. She didn't have to. The bruises peeking out from under her sleeve told the rest. Richard felt sick. His wife was a liar, a thief, maybe even a would-be murderer. But seeing her shake like this, he realized something worse. She was disposable. Mark had played her perfectly, stoking old flames, then twisting them into a weapon. And now that Richard was onto them, Linda wasn't a partner. She was a loose end. Emily grabbed Linda's shoulders. Mom, listen to me. That man is going to kill you. Maybe Dad too. You need to call the police. Now. But Linda jerked away wild-eyed. You don't understand. He has photos of us, oh God. She dissolved into sobs again. That's when Richard noticed the gun safe in the corner. Open. And his .38 revolver? Gone. The silence in the room was suffocating. Richard stared at the empty gun safe, his mind racing. That revolver wasn't just for show. He'd taught Linda to use it years ago after a break-in. Now, it was in the hands of a violent con man who had every reason to want them dead. Emily was already dialing 911, her voice low and urgent. Linda sat frozen, her face a mask of pure regret. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she whispered. Richard wanted to scream, to shake her, to demand how she could be so blind. But the fear in her eyes told him the truth. Linda wasn't the mastermind here. She was the victim of a predator who had sniffed out her loneliness and sunk his teeth in deep. The police arrived fast, but not fast enough. While Linda gave her statement through tears, Richard slipped outside and called the one person who might know where Mark would run, his parole officer. The man's sigh crackled through the phone. "Mark's been off-grid for weeks. But if he's desperate, he'll go where the money is." Richard's blood ran cold. Because the money wasn't just in accounts anymore. It was in their safe. He sprinted back inside, shoved past the cops, and threw open the closet in their bedroom. The floor safe, the one they'd installed after retirement, the one where they kept emergency cash, was wide open. Empty. $20,000. Gone. But Mark wasn't done. Because as Richard stood there, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Tell Linda she's got 24 hours to get me the rest, or I start sending those photos to every family member you've got." Attached was a screenshot, a cloud folder labeled insurance, filled with files. And one of them was named accident.pdf. Richard's hands shook as he showed the detective the text. The officer's expression darkened. "We'll put a unit on your house. But if he's this brazen, he's not planning to wait." Linda, now pale and hollow-eyed, whispered the truth. Mark had been blackmailing her for months. First with shame, then with threats, then with fists. The affair had turned into a nightmare long before Richard even suspected. But the most chilling detail? Mark had been inside their home 6 times while Richard was out. He knew the layout, the routines, where they kept everything, including the spare key to Emily's apartment. Richard's head snapped up. "Emily, go stay at a hotel." Now, she hesitated. "What about you two? We're bait." That night, the house was a trap. Cops hid in unmarked cars down the street. Richard sat in the living room, the curtains open, pretending to watch TV, his actual shotgun across his lap. Linda, playing along, moved between rooms like nothing was wrong. But Mark didn't come. At 3:17 a.m., Emily's frantic call woke them. "Someone just tried to break into my apartment." The cops raced over, but all they found was a crowbar wedged in her doorframe and a note taped to the wood. "You should have paid up, Linda." The detective slammed his notepad shut. "This just escalated to attempted burglary and threats. We're issuing a warrant, but we need Linda to testify." Linda's hands trembled as she clutched a coffee cup. "He'll kill me." Richard had never seen her like this. Not when their daughter was born, not when her mother passed. This was raw, animal fear. Emily, still shaken from the break-in, pulled up Mark's social media. "Look, he's not hiding." A photo posted 2 hours ago. Mark at a bar, grinning, flashing a wad of cash, their cash. The location tag was still live. The Rusty Nail. 45 minutes away. The detective grabbed his radio. "We'll pick him up." Richard stood. "I'm coming." The bar was a dive, the kind with sticky floors and broken neon. 2 squad cars rolled up silently, lights off. Inside, Mark was holding court at the pool table, laughing too loud. He didn't see the cops until they were right behind him. "Mark Dutton, you're under arrest." His smirk vanished. Then he lunged, not at the cops, but at his phone, smashing it on the table before they could grab him. Too late. The detective held up an evidence bag. "We've got enough on you already." As they hauled him out, Mark locked eyes with Richard through the window. And for the first time, Richard saw it. Fear. The interrogation room was cold. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Mark slouched in his chair, cuffed wrists resting on the metal table. He'd been read his rights, but his smirk never faded. Like this was all some game he still planned to win. Detective Reyes slid a folder across the table. "Let's talk about the life insurance policies." Mark shrugged. "Linda's a big girl. She signed the papers herself. Under coercion. We have texts, photos, medical records of her bruises. She fell 6 times. Reyes flipped open the folder, crime scene photos from Mark's past. A burned-down house, a shattered windshield, an ex-girlfriend's hospital report. Funny how accidents follow you. Mark's jaw tightened. Then the detective played his trump card. Your cloud storage password was Insurance123. Real creative. For the first time, Mark looked cornered. Meanwhile, Linda sat in the precinct lobby, wrapped in a blanket, staring at her wedding ring. Richard hadn't spoken to her since the arrest. Emily squeezed her hand. He's going to prison, Mom. It's over. Linda whispered the question that had been eating her alive. Why didn't I see it? Richard finally looked at her. Because he wasn't just selling you a lie. His voice cracked. He was selling you the past. The one where you weren't a grandmother with mortgage payments. Where you were young. Wanted. Linda's tears hit the linoleum. And I let him. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and stale coffee. Linda sat stiffly in the witness stand, her voice barely above a whisper as she recounted the threats, the stolen money. The night Mark had pressed a gun to her ribs and hissed, "One wrong move, and I paint the walls with you." The jury didn't just believe her, they felt it. Mark's smirk had long since vanished. His lawyer's objections grew more desperate as the prosecutor laid out the evidence. The forged signatures on insurance documents. The Google searches for undetectable poisons on Linda's laptop, made while she was at work. The damning accident.pdf file detailing a staged car crash. When the guilty verdict came down, Mark lunged at Linda, spitting, "You ruined everything," before bailiffs tackled him. But the real twist came after sentencing. As marshals led him away, Mark snarled at Richard. "You think this is over? I've got friends on the outside who owe me favors." Richard didn't flinch. Asterisk, and I've got a 12 gauge with your name on it. Asterisk. 6 months later, the divorce papers were finalized. Linda moved to a small condo near Emily, attending therapy twice a week. Some days, she still jumped at slamming doors. Richard sold the house. Too many ghosts. But on a raw Tuesday morning, he found himself standing at Linda's door with 2 coffees, one black, one with the disgusting vanilla creamer she loved. She stared at him through the screen. Why? Because 40 years doesn't just disappear. He set the cups down between them. But we don't have to do this alone. For the first time in years, it wasn't a lie. The coffee steamed between them on the patio table, the silence stretching like the morning fog over the quiet suburban street. Linda wrapped her hands around the mug, not just for warmth, but to still their trembling. "I thought you'd hate me forever," she said finally. Richard studied the face he'd known for nearly half a century, the new lines of stress, the hollows under her eyes that hadn't been there a year ago. "I did. For a while." He took a slow sip. "Then I realized. Hate takes too much energy." A squirrel darted across the lawn, breaking the tension. Linda almost smiled. But the past wasn't done with them yet. 3 weeks later, the letter arrived in a plain white envelope with no return address. Linda's blood ran cold when she recognized the handwriting. His handwriting. Inside, a single line. "You testified. Now meet your new pen pal." Attached was a photocopied inmate request form, with Emily's full name and address. Detective Reyes examined the note under gloves. "It's him." Prison mailroom confirmed it went out before lockdown. Richard's hands clenched. "He's still playing games." "Worse," Reyes said. "He's networking." That pen pal reference means he's made connections inside. Emily, ever the lawyer, saw the silver lining. "This violates his no-contact order. We can bury him deeper." But Linda was staring at the envelope like it might burst into flames. What if this isn't the only one he sent? The visit. The prison visiting room smelled of bleach and sweat. Mark shuffled in wearing orange scrubs, his once slick hair, now prison short. But his eyes still held that same predatory gleam. "Miss me?" he sneered. Linda didn't blink. "We're here to tell you one thing. Any more letters? Any more threats? And Emily files for a permanent restraining order, so ironclad, you'll spend your next parole hearing in chains." Mark leaned forward, his whisper dripping venom. "You think paper stops men like me?" Richard finally spoke. "No. But this does." He slid a photo across the table, Mark's younger brother, smiling at a backyard barbecue. "Turns out your family's easier to find than you thought." For the first time, real fear flickered in Mark's eyes. Epilogue. 1 year later. The parole board denied Mark's first request unanimously. Linda planted roses in her new garden, thorns and all. And on Sundays, Richard still brought 2 coffees. One black, one sickeningly sweet. Some scars never fade. But as they sat watching Emily's kids play in the yard, Linda reached over and squeezed Richard's hand. Not as husband and wife, but as 2 survivors who'd walked through hell and somehow found their way back. The true end. Stories like this remind us The most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves. If you want more shocking true stories of survival, smash that subscribe button. Because trust me, you haven't heard the last of these tales.